So I've done a few videos now where I've been looking at, most specifically, Chris Stearns going to the hotel in the middle of the night in Orlando, because it's just one of the things about the case that's been really bothering me. Now, I've explained this in multiple ways in several videos, so if you want to really delve into that, there's a number of videos in my playlist which you can go and look at where I do really dig into this. The main thing about this is that basically we have, in Chris Stearns' own words, that he did not pay for the hotel room for Jenn and Stephan. They paid for themselves. They also paid the fee for having the dog with them, and he reimbursed them for that. So he didn't even pay that up front. So he didn't pay anything up front for them for the hotel. So my question has been, why then did he need to apparently get out of bed at 11:15 at night and then drive all the way to Orlando, 2 and a bit hours, to book into a hotel when he wasn't needed to actually get them into the hotel? So why not go in the morning? And there's a lot of things that I've noticed that are inconsistent with this whole narrative, and a lot of things that I've noticed that seem to be quite suspicious. Now, wanting to be fair, I do want to dig into possibilities as to why he needed to go in the middle of the night to the hotel. And one suggestion that was made, which I decided I wanted to dig into a little bit more, was that perhaps even if Jenn and Stephan did pay for their own hotel rooms, maybe there was a need for some kind of security deposit via a credit card that they couldn't do. In other words, maybe they didn't pay via credit card and there needed to be a credit card on file or something that to secure in case there was something went wrong. Interesting thought, although my first thought to that was, well, can't you book hotels online with credit cards anyway? So wouldn't it be possible for Chris Stearns to actually simply go guarantor over the phone by giving his credit card? I mean, people book hotels every day using credit cards. We know that he's quite tech savvy, so he could have also done that online, surely. But let's say that that wasn't a possibility. Let's look into the notion of Jenn and Stephan paid for themselves, but for some reason they needed Chris there with a credit card as like a guarantor or something. Now I'm going to start with playing some clips and then I'll dig into it a bit more as we go along. Now, if you are familiar with my channel, you are probably familiar with that noise in the background. That is my chihuahua asleep on my lap, snoring like a buzzsaw. It just seems to be the way of it. The moment I start to work, she settles in, gets comfortable, and she's totally blissed out when the snoring starts. So hopefully you can manage to tune that out because she's going all out today. But let's get back to this and let's listen to the first audio from interviews with Chris Stearns.
And then I went to bed. I was 10 or something. I'm all tucked into bed. I got the boys with me. And I may have been partially asleep because I had my phone on silent. And then I woke up because the phone was vibrating, and then my watch would have been in the office. So the phone was vibrating. By the time I got it, there was no connect. So then that was at 10:42, and then I made an out call at 10:43, and then the conversation was about, you need to come up here.
And who says that?
They both did because they were on speaker.
Okay.
And Stephan said, hey, you need to come up here. And I said, okay. I said, so we discussed, they were being kicked out. They didn't have a place to stay. So I said, well, we need to figure out where to go for, where to stay and what have you. And so I'm jumping in the shower, packing a bag, talking to Deb, making plans to leave, which I did it just after midnight.
So I used that clip just to establish the timeline. So him saying that they rang him at 11:15 to say, you need to get up here. Now, as part of that, he says they were being kicked out of the apartment and had nowhere to go. However, if you look at the time frame, Jenn's interview that she did ended at 12:06, and it was just before that interview ended, or 12:09. Either way, it ended just shortly after midnight, and it was at the end of that interview that they informed her that she wasn't able to go back into the apartment, and that they were locking it down overnight until they could process it in the morning. So I find it interesting that he's saying that they had rang him at 11:15 to say that they were not allowed back in the apartment, because that doesn't seem to fit with the timeline according to interviews. So you could think from this first bit that he said, you could infer from what he's saying that he was saying that they needed him to go up there to get them into a hotel, because that's the flow of his narrative. But let's listen to some more of what was said and see if that is actually correct.
He called me up and said, well, I'm short in funds. Can you, Zelle me $150, send him that. But meanwhile, now he's telling me he's got money in savings, which I didn't believe. Mm-hmm. So where the money was coming from, I have no idea. But these packages just kept arriving.
When you would support him, how would you get him money?
I sell it.
Now, I need a bit of help from some of my American listeners here in terms of an explanation of Zelle. I gather it's just like a cash app. But my question here is it like in Australia, if we do a transfer between bank accounts, it goes through immediately, and that's called Osoko. So if I were to transfer money into my sister's bank account, that would go into her account immediately, and she would have it there to use as soon as I press send, basically. We don't have Zelle or Zeld or whatever it's called in Australia, so I'm not entirely familiar with it. So my first question there is it a immediate transfer? Does the money go through straight away, or does it take some time to clear? But for the purpose of this video, there's two things there. So he talks about zelling or zelding his son money whenever he needs it. But then he talks about how Stephan supposedly has a lot of money for buying all these expensive things, and we know that he does, because like his father said, he was constantly getting parcels, and it seems like he was getting them delivered to both addresses, so getting them to his parents' house and getting them delivered to Jenn's place. So he definitely had some funds in his accounts somewhere that he could easily access. So Now, that obviously doesn't go back to the question of a credit card, but it certainly answers the question of, could it have been Stephan who paid for Jenn and Stephan to have a hotel room? Because Jenn, in her interview with police, was like, oh, woe is me, you threw me out of my apartment, and we couldn't and I couldn't, I'm only on a disability pension, so I couldn't afford a room. And she claims that Chris paid for it. And yet you have Chris here saying that no, they paid for their own room. So I'm thinking here that Stephan paid for it. But the question, of course, for this video is, was there a need for a credit card to be on file? So I think we can infer from this, for starters, that Stephan probably did have enough money available to him to pay for the hotel. But the question still remains, did they need Chris Stearns to go there to be like a credit card guarantor? Personally, I'm still going with, why couldn't he have just rang up and done that over the phone if that was the case? But for this video, I'm just trying to dig a bit further about, eliminate all possibilities in terms of why the heck did Chris Stearns need to go to Orlando in the middle of the night if he didn't need to pay for the hotel.
And then I got a call from them at 1:18, lasted for 2 minutes, and then at 1:51, 50 seconds, because I arrived at the hotel.
What were the conversation at the 118 area? What was that conversation about?
Just confirmation of where they were and where we were staying and the address of the hotel, because
Okay.
it was out off of west of Disney off the 429.
And from what I understand, did you pay for the hotel or did they pay for it?
They paid for theirs, and I paid for mine, but then it said a pet-friendly hotel, pet-friendly if you pay $150 for the night.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, all right, so I paid for the dog to stay.
Okay, their dog.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, I actually reimbursed her for it.
Okay, so they were already at the hotel 40 minutes before he arrived. Half an hour to 40 minutes before he arrived at the hotel. Him saying that they rang him at 1:18 to say, this is where we are staying, to me infers that they had already paid for a room. Because you wouldn't just sit outside a hotel and go, well, hopefully they've got a room. Yep, this will be where we're staying. Because you couldn't be certain. Even if you had said, are you going to have a room? Until you've paid for that room, you still can't be certain that that's where you're staying. So, to me, that says that they had already paid for their room at 1:20 when they contacted him and said, this is the hotel where we are staying. Now, the police officers clarify with Chris Stearns, did you pay for the room? And he's like, no, they paid for the room, I paid for the dog. Well, actually, I reimbursed them for the dog. So he's making it clear that Stephan and Jenn paid all their own expenses there for the room. Now, here's the thing in terms of whether or not there was a need for a credit card on file for a deposit or something. I would imagine that it would not be possible if a hotel did want some sort of security with a credit card, that they would not allow the actual room booking to go through without that in the first place. So the fact that Chris Stearns was driving, he was on the road while they were booking themselves into a hotel, says that they had no problems booking into a hotel with no access to his credit card. But did they have their own credit card to use? I guess that's the next question.
You don't know if he has his own credit cards or anything like that, do you?
He has one, maybe two credit cards at best that are his, and nothing else.
Okay.
I don't think he may have, I gave him access to a second Chase account that I set up for him, but it hasn't been used for whatever time, so if he has that, it doesn't have any money in the account. So other than that, that's the only thing I would know he had. I gave him, he would have use of the gas card, but I made him fill it up and give me the card back, so he didn't have use of that.
What banks does he have? Chase and...
Well, he has a second account that I set up, but he has his own account with Disney Partners.
Credit union or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not totally familiar with American banking, I'll just say that now. But he says he has one, maybe two credit cards that are his. And then he talks about a Chase account. So I don't know if that means that is a credit card as well, and that he has a credit card that his dad provided him, that Chris Stearns provided him with. But we have it there in Chris Stearns' own words. Stephan had at least two of his own credit cards. So that takes us back to the beginning. In terms of Stephan and Jenn booking into the hotel and getting a room, they were booked in, they were paid for half an hour or 40 minutes before Chris Stearns even arrived. They paid for themselves. He reimbursed them for the dog staying there. They did not need him to be there for them to check into the hotel room. Did they need him to go as a guarantor with a credit card? It seems unlikely, because for starters, you would expect that could be done over the phone. But also, like I said, they were already booked in before he even arrived in Orlando and booked his own room. And we have Stephan Stearns with at least two of his own credit cards. So once again, this goes straight back to the question of, why did they need Chris Stearns to drive in the middle of the night for 2 hours to get to Orlando just to go to and sleep overnight in a hotel, when they were capable of getting themselves booked into the hotel without him around, without his credit card, without any financial assistance from him? So I feel like, having had a look at the credit card side of things, I'm back to square one. Why did Chris Stearns need to go to Orlando in the middle of the night? Because he was not going to pay for the hotel room. We've established that. I've established that well and truly. So to me, you have a number of things which stacked up together just seem really odd. The fact that they contacted him before they knew that they weren't going to be allowed back in the apartment. The fact that he spent an hour before he even left Northport. The fact that the front door keypad, suddenly the battery was dead on it, so the front door couldn't be used. And wow, coincidentally, the door cams couldn't be used either, because he had pulled out the modem and put it on his office floor, because he was changing providers, and he had given some strange excuse about why he had suddenly realised that he needed to disable them, so he pulled the modem out and put it on the floor. You also have him carefully avoiding the fact that there was a back door in their house, and not discussing how anyone could access the house via that back door. You have this weird overreaction of Deb Stearns to the possibility of her son maybe entering the house during the night. And you have him making this random midnight trip to Orlando on the pretext that they needed him to pay for a hotel room, when we find out that he actually didn't pay for the hotel room. So we're not actually told precisely why it was that they needed him to go there in the first place. There's something that just does not add up here. So thanks for listening. If you're new to my channel, please do subscribe. Also, please hit the like button and leave a comment below. What are your thoughts about why Chris Stearns needed to go to Orlando in the middle of the night, given that it seems that he was not needed in any way to get Stephan and Jenn into a hotel room? What was the point of getting out of bed at 11 o'clock at night, faffing around for an hour, and then driving 2 hours to Orlando just to book into a hotel to sleep? Just why? It's very interesting to me. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.